Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played for 11 seasons with the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, this program, I want to start by talking about, the trade deadline isn't that far off.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the teams that we think really should make a move and why they should make a move. And I'll start it out. My number one team is the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I say that because I think this organization needs to make the playoffs for a variety of reasons. I think John Tortorella, who I think is a good fit for this team. I think the players respond to him. But I don't think he's got the team to get it done. I look at center ice, and Roslovic, I think, has done a decent job, but he's not a number one center. This team needs a number one center. Yeah. And, you're not going to find them in the trade market. Well, or can you? And the person I have in mind is Eric Staal of the Buffalo Sabres. Oh. He may not be a number one center anymore. Maybe he's a two, but he can play that role. And he knows what's required. And I just think they need another offensive guy. And I think this team, I don't know, how the fan base is going to respond if they miss the playoffs yet again. They're in, they're out. They went a period where they weren't in. It just seems like it's been a bit of a rocky ride there. And I think the fan base is going to demand more. And, now we start looking at Jarmo Kekalainen, who I think does a decent job. But, it's about results in this business. So where they look at him.
I don't think you're wrong in your statement that they need more offense. And I like Staal as a player. But, again, you touched on it. He probably isn't a number one anymore. I don't know if he really makes that much of a difference, right? Like it's you're making a trade, but then you say, well, okay, you just made a trade to make a trade. I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, where do you get a guy that's available now that you can bring in that's really going to make that much of a difference for your team offensively, right? And I got to tell you, like Patrick Laine is already making statements about like he can't understand why he wasn't playing well. He got benched right away when he got there for Tortorella. Listen, I'm with you. I think Tortorella does a great job, but is there a certain shelf life to him that after a while it just wears thin? The guys just can't keep playing. If you want to get skill out of your players, he may not. I think you said this a while ago too. He may not be the coach that can coach skilled players, right? Although he coached the Cavalier when they won the Stanley Cup in Tampa, but they were butting heads all the time too. So yeah. I hear you. I don't know who you need. To me, it's almost like they'd have to go back to the well again. They'd go make a trade with Nashville and go get Johansson back if they want to. The big centerman, get him back. I
wouldn't do that. Just because I'm just not sure he was ever the guy.
Yeah.
He had, he just never has had.
He has had spells where he showed that he could be a number one centerman, a big time.
Yeah, but not enough of them, Tom. Yeah. I really believe that. I do think Eric Staal could help. We've talked about this before, and I know you know this as well. Like if you bring Staal in and then move Roslovic down, that really makes two lines better. Right. And I think Laine and Staal would be a good mix. So maybe that gets him going. Sure. So I think it could actually have an impact. And, their issue now, all of a sudden now, Merzlikins is healthy again. They've got goaltending. Yep. Korpisalo has been decent. Merzlikins is Elvis gets it done. Yep. We like their defense, although I don't think their defense has played as well this season as it did last year. And, I think you raise a good point about the shelf life of Tortorella. After a while, the message isn't as clear, doesn't get through. They grow weary of it. Pick your, what you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think their biggest problem all season is that it's just so hard for them to win because they can't get goals.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the only problem with your Staal rumor, though, is that he will end up going to the New York Islanders. That's what's going to happen. They've lost Anders Lee for the season there. Their leader, their captain and everything. And they've got a good team. I think they won 9 of the last 10 games. So they say, well, listen, we can't let this team go to waste. I mean, they can hold it together, I think, for a while. It's one of those cases where one of your top players goes out, you can hold it together for a while, but then after a while, you're really going to miss that player. So to me, Stahl is really an older version of Anders Lee, the same kind of guy, a big man, good hands around the net. So that's why your theory that he's going to Columbus is not accurate, because he's going to end up with New York Islanders.
Well, I mean, I think that's, a possibility. We've also heard he was going to go to Carolina to play with his brother Jordan. Right. And obviously he started there. They're familiar with him. Do
they need him though? Do they need him there? Do they need him there?
Well, probably need. I would say no. Want. Right. But I don't think they'll get crazy on it. And the bidding probably the Islanders will pay more.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Here's the question: does Anders Lee plays big? Does Eric Stahl play big?
Well, but again, there's a big man. Anders Lee's around the front of the net all the time. You're right. I don't know if he plays really big, like banging and crashing. He's a big, strong guy that's hard to move.
Yeah, in front of that net. Yeah. He's going to play a different kind of game than Eric Stahl. That's my point. So yeah, because Anders Lee does get in front of that net, and right. That's a horrible loss too. What did they say? What the actual injury was?
No, I didn't see anything. No.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Here, real quick though, we have some of our listeners are like very intelligent people. Barry Shelley, who follows us all the time. Chef Tom. Wow, I like that. Maybe you could call me. Maybe you could call me that from now on.
Okay, Chef Tom.
Yeah, very good. I like that. Thanks, Barry. So who else? Did you see my? Hold on. I know we were doing this exercise. We're going to be making trades, but did you see my fish and chips yesterday?
I did. I thought it looked outstanding. Yeah, people were really excited about it.
Just so you know, you and your wife are always on my mind when I'm plating my food now to make sure I got enough color on there as well.
Yeah. I don't. Well, my wife never said anything about the color of your.
Well, no, but I want her to like my cooking. She's a master chef, so her approval means a lot to me.
She really is good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's still the greatest put down I ever had of you. That was totally accidental.
I know, and I'm devastated by it. Yeah, it's always on my mind.
I did see it. It looked good, and this is the kind of the fish fry time because Catholics don't eat meat on Friday, and so you see them popping up. All the Catholic churches have fish fries, and the Knights of Columbus, and Arby's has fish only in this time of year, and this is the time we're all thinking fish.
Okay, I like that.
No doubt about it.
How about you? Are you doing corned beef on Thursday for St. Patty's Day?
I don't know. I may go up to my lake house. I think my son-in-law will do it. He usually does it.
Right.
And he cooks some corned beef and cabbage. But I may go up to my lake house. I'm working on a couple of books, and I need a little solitude to get things rolling. So I may not be around for that. If I'm up there, I doubt whether I'm going to go to the local pub and get my corned beef. And
or it's on Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah. Because we're doing Thursday, we're doing our show with Dave Maloney, Ron Gresham, and Larry Melnick. I think we're going to have a little festivities that pretend that we're going to celebrate St. Patty's Day on Thursday.
Are you guys going to drink green beer?
I think there'll be some cocktails to be had. I'm not sure what it's going to be. So.
Well, it should be green.
Yeah.
I think I saw that, they always pour that dye in the Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think they said originally they weren't going to do it, and now I guess they did do it.
Yeah, I saw a picture. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
All right, we're making a trade then. Come on, who we got?
Pardon?
You're next. So
okay, we're still doing more trades. Well, here's the question that I wanted to ask you, just in terms of there's a lot of talk about the Maple Leafs making a deal to get another depth scorer. Do they really need to do that? I mean, they're already among the top scoring teams in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they are what they are. But you see that everywhere.
If you see the teams that win, like you think back to the Washington Capitals when they won, it wasn't some addition that they made to the lineup. It was a guy they did. It was Dominic Smith-Pelly stepped up. It was that fourth line guy. It's always seems to be some guy that you don't necessarily expect to be a goal scorer for you, but he steps up and does the scoring. I think back to the times when people made trades for people that were supposed to be goal scorers, and did it ever work out that way? Again, I think it's just they win the Stanley Cup. You have to have those certain guys step up. I mean, mean, look at Pittsburgh, I guess, with Phil Kessel, but that wasn't like a deadline deal trade that they made, right? It was, they got him during the summer, I believe. So,
well, I mean, just going back to where we started, I did want to kind of talk about the Maple Leafs because I was surprised that there's been so much discussion because they got so much going.
Yeah.
But a team that really does need to make a deal, I think, just to make sure they get in the playoffs because they haven't played well and they were so good last year, was Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of discussion that they are very interested in Matthias Ekholm of Nashville. And also maybe Arvidsson there. So they're going to, add. They definitely have to add a defenseman. I think that has to be the priority. But I also think they would like to add, some more scoring depth. But that, you won't get those two guys for nothing.
Yeah. I just don't see. I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on there. I know a lot of people like that team. I just don't think they're that good. Like, I don't think it's like they're one or two players away from being a real contender. I just don't see it with that team. But
well, don't you think? This is a philosophic thing that maybe we should talk about because I'm getting the sense you don't put much stock in the idea of we got to get into the playoffs. See, I think it's important. Like, I think it you got to get in the playoffs. Before you. I think it's where you got to get invited.
Right. But it's where you're at. Like, Detroit doesn't need to get in the playoffs, right? They're not even close.
No, but they're kind of they've announced, they're in the midst of a rebuild. There are some teams, obviously, that everybody just accepts. Right. Because, we've talked about this before in that, there's new levels of rooting now. Especially with the younger generation, there's, a group of fans that are totally accepting of the idea of let's, strip it down and let's gather draft picks and, let's root for losses and get, a better deal. I have trouble with that, but that's kind of the way it is. But there are only a few teams like that. Right. For the most part, I think if you get in, you got to try to get in. Yeah,
but okay, so all right, I'll look out west there then. So right now, LA, Arizona, San Jose, and Anaheim are all out of the playoffs right now based on points. So is it going to change much in those four places? Well, San Jose's got to cover a few things for us, right? There's a team that needs to make some trades, and Doug Wilson, general manager, has come out and said that it is a reset. He's calling it a reset now. And Carlson that they traded for said, well, that's not what I came here for. So you wonder, what's going on there. But I just think with those four teams, I think what's going to change with those teams if they make the playoffs? Does that make them a better team, or you're more thinking because it's the fans?
Well, I guess my question is, I'm going to turn it around on you because you're the one that thinks that I think you should always try to go for the playoffs.
Yeah,
to have some hope. I mean, does it change them long term? No, but I would really be disappointed if I was the owner of the Coyotes and my GM said, "Yeah, we're halfway through the season, we're behind. I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not going to push for it."
Right.
I go, that's not what I signed on here for.
Right. Totally. No, so, I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I think that you have to go in looking to make the playoffs. There's no question. And obviously, if you're top tier teams, you go in looking to win the cups.
Now, but LA, I think it's accepted out there that they're still rebuilding. So I don't think there's much pressure on them.
Right. I hear you. Like, there's no pressure, and I hear you. It'd be great to make the playoffs. Like what Vancouver did last year really was more than was anticipated by them. It's their run in the playoffs there too. Now they're showing what really kind of team they are, right? I mean, it's a young team. When you get young players, Rangers are in the same boat. They're a young team. If they make the playoffs, you're right. I guess the fans will like it more, but it really doesn't change the Vancouver and the Rangers. It doesn't change where they're at in their progress towards being a consistently Stanley Cup contending team. Right, but I see from the fan standpoint. And
I mean, I you can't argue what you just said, but I mean that seems fairly obvious that like the Coyotes, like nothing changes if they make the playoffs. They're still a long way from winning a Stanley Cup, but I just think that organization has to try to get in every year they can, because they're still trying to win over fans. You need to set a positive tone in the dressing room.
Well, I agree with all that. I agree with the positive tone. I think to continually lose all the time. We talked about that before with Steve Yzerman.
Yeah, no, So I think I think the Coyotes, if there's an opportunity to improve the team, should go for it.
But what
Trying
cost?
to get in.
So what do you do? So what cost? You bring in an older player like a Stahl and give up some young draft pick, or
Well, they don't even have any draft picks to give up. So, they may not even be able to do it. But, I think you've got to at least, poke around and see what you can do to try to make the playoffs. And to be honest, I think it's going to be hard for them to make it. You look at those teams above them and, they're not better than any of those teams.
Yeah, totally. That's what I would say. And I hear you're right. It'd be nice to make the playoffs. But again, it's almost like you're fooling yourself. Like, did Vancouver fool themselves last year by doing what they did? Because clearly they haven't picked up that same pace this year, right? It's almost like you fool your fans.
Well, when you put it like that, you make it sound like it would have been better if they didn't make the playoffs, and that's not true.
Well, I hear you. I do hear your point, but
it's like you gotta, the sports is still about winning and trying to, to do something. I mean, we can't always have long range planning wrapped up in every move we make.
But
sometimes we have to just
but if I'm the fan base and I'm the owner, I want to know that I'm doing something that's going to make us a contending team for the next 10 to 15 years. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's the new young hip thing, and I live in Detroit where
why is that the new
Lions fans talking about that?
Hasn't it always been like that?
So
hasn't it always been like that though?
Well, no, it hasn't always been like that. Like, it was never acceptable to tank. You didn't have people sitting around like we have now rooting for your team to lose.
No, but it's always been that you want to be a contending team for as long as possible, right?
For sure.
Right.
For sure. But you always did it within the context of, we're going to try every year to make the playoffs. Now people just openly root, as I explained before, but it bears repeating because not everybody listens to every show. But, last year, my sons, and I use that including my son-in-law and a guy that I treat as a son, the three of them who are big-time Lions fans, as the season wore on, were actively rooting for them to lose to get a better draft pick. And their entire rooting interest became about where we can go to move up to get a top draft pick. Right. And that now is acceptable. Like, they weren't, they're not the only three people in the country who do that. There are now people who there's two levels of rooting. You saw it this year with the Jets on social media and Twitter. There were people rooting for the Jets. I think the Jets ended up winning a game, and people said, "Man, they screwed it up."
But here's what's changed over the years. It's called the salary cap. So in the National Hockey League now, we have a salary cap. So in the old days with the Detroit Red Wings, who use an example, and the Rangers did this, and other teams, Colorado, if they had enough cash or they have enough rich enough owner, they just bought free agents. So they didn't build through yes, they still drafted effectively. Especially Detroit was famous for doing a great job in the draft. But when they needed those extra players, so Luke Robitaille, the Brendan Shanahans, those kind of guys, they went out and got them, right? Now you can't. It's harder to do that. Well, you basically can't do it now. That's why you've got to build through the draft now. So you've got to. Yes, you have to rebuild, reset, whatever they want to call it. And you have to tank, but you can only do that. I hate to say the word tank. You have to get rid of some of those older players, get your draft picks, build it back up again to now have that strong organization for years to come. To me, that's the difference.
Well, but there were only about 20% of the league or 25% of the league that could actually do that, what you just described. I mean, it was really only the Rangers, the Red Wings, the
Flyers.
Yeah, there was,
But those were the teams that won all the time too, right? Colorado
won five or six teams that were able to do that.
But they won all the time. They won all the time too, right?
Well, did they?
Well, Colorado won. Detroit won. Philadelphia was a contending team all the time. I guess you look at it and you go back
Philadelphia to hasn't won since the 70s.
Well, they were a contending team. They're in the finals, right? They're a winning organization.
Twice to the finals, yeah.
But then, maybe you look and say, was it Carolina and Edmonton in the finals? Was that the only two teams that maybe weren't those big market, big money teams?
Yeah, but that was wasn't that the first final after the salary cap?
I think it was, yes. Yeah.
So before it was Tampa and Calgary.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Well, I mean, getting back to where we started all this, I do understand what you're saying that, sometimes getting in the playoffs, I mean, you're getting in, but you can't win.
Right.
But I do think it's important.
And it's what you do to get in too. Like if you were to be Arizona and you go trade for a Mark Stahl, who's at the end of his career, and you have to give, like you said, they don't have much to give up. But if they had to give up some young prospect or draft pick, then what was the point of that, right?
Well, you gotta weigh that, but sometimes you can make it, and sometimes you just need to, like when you're a parent, when sometimes you do things, just to sort of make a statement with your children that doesn't have anything, and that's the same thing with your fan base.
But Columbus did that too, though. Columbus went out and got all those guys, made the playoffs, and then they're all gone, right? Bobrovsky left, Duchesne left, all those guys left.
I go back. Remember years ago when the Florida Panthers decided not to trade Boomeister because they wanted to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then they didn't get anything for him because he left as a free agent. And I was supportive of that.
Yeah.
Just because, they hadn't made the playoffs in a while. Like fans needed something. You can't just continuously. Like it would have been important this year. Now it's too late, but for the Buffalo Sabres to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like if they could have moved mountains. Because what ended up happening with them is we all got fooled and we thought, well, we're going to see significant changes. They're going to, at least take a step forward. They got Taylor Hall and looked like the things were moving up. Darlene was a year older. It's the same old Sabres.
Well, and worse. And, they've gotten worse with anything, right?
Yeah.
And the quote was Eichel's out for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. That doesn't sound good, and it sounds like there's a chance he might be out for the season.
Yeah.
So no go. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Sharks. You mentioned it, but boy, where do they go from here?
Yeah.
You're not trading Erik Karlsson. Right. Like there's several contracts around the league. Skinner in Buffalo, right. Johansson in Nashville. Duchesne in Nashville, Karlsson in San Jose. Yeah. You're not trading those guys, right. Not without considerable pain involved.
And again, it pains me to say this because I have a tremendous respect for Doug Wilson, both as general manager and as player, and for somebody that has the hair that he's got too. But okay, you trade for Karlsson, then you sign him to that big contract, and now you're telling us you're doing a reset? I mean, those things don't go together. Like if you're going to do a reset, you don't go get Karlsson. That eats up a big chunk of your salary cap. You've already got, especially when you've already got the big guy there on defense. It's like, I hate to say it, but does he know what direction this team is going is, or just kind of flip-flops and based on where, like, you got to be able to look at your lineup and not be fooled by any kind of record. That's one of those cases where you say, okay, how good are we? How good are we going to be in 2 years and 5 years? And obviously, he misread the tea leaves there, right?
I would say for sure he misread the tea leaves. But at the time, I'm sure he thought, well, we're going to be good for a while. And you would have thought and we talked about this the other day. I think we both agreed that at the time, and maybe still today, those were the two of the most, maybe the top two dynamic offensive. Defenseman in the game. This year I'm looking now. So Karlsson has 9 points in 21 games.
Yeah.
So that's a 36 point projection over 82 games. And you go back to when he was great. He had 82 points, 71 points, 62 points, 74 points. But there was an immediate drop off as soon as he got to San Jose, although he's never been able to play a full season either.
You watch him play now. It's not the same. That probably more than anybody else in the league. That's the biggest drop off of talent, right? Because arguably was, I don't necessarily like that style totally, but you could couldn't say he's not one of the top 5 defensemen in the league there for many years. And now, where is he now? Like him and PK Subban, I think, are the two guys that probably dropped off more than anybody.
Yeah. Well, here's the sad part is he's only 30 years old.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, and nowadays, guys are performing at a pretty high level into their mid-30s.
Yep.
So,
totally. Yep.
So I don't know what they do there. I mean, they're kind of in the position similar to Los Angeles, but they, Los Angeles was building around 2 big contracts in Doughty and Kopitar, but they were still effective players.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
They don't. I don't think that the San Jose doesn't have a Kopitar.
Yeah, and Doughty still plays hard, right? He may not be the player he was, but he's a competitive player, and that's what you want your young guys to be around. They want to have that leader that competes hard and comes to play every night. And that's not Karlsson, right? It's just I like him as a player. It seems like he's a gentleman and a professional.
Great guy, just a tremendous human being. Right. I mean, sometimes we need to remind people that because we throw this around and and we forget that these are human beings and. This is their job and they're getting paid a lot of money for it. But, there are certainly in all facets of life, there are people who work who aren't as good as they were, 5 years before at what they do. So,
on the good side, we have to touch on the Rangers too. The great game. They got beat by Boston last night and probably got pushed around by Boston too. And they came out and won 4-0 and really, played a hard game too. Panarin's back playing. I thought Zibanejad was better. I thought defensively he was getting back to the old player he was. He's still not scoring the points that he wants to score, but watch out for our Rangers. They still can make the playoffs here.
Yeah, what do you think the chances are of that?
Well, given
what's the I was shocked when we had Dave Maloney on.
Yeah.
And I think both you and I would agree that Dave Maloney is closer to the situation than either of us.
Right.
And he said that he had not expected the team to make the playoffs. And this I think was based on the idea that, what we all know, but sometimes we fail to remember when we make our projections is that, younger teams, do have some kind of ups and downs, even after they have one good season, like the Rangers were so good at the end of last season. So
if I'm going to look at the end of last season, I look at that lineup, and I think you've touched on it too. Zibanejad and Panarin were 2 of the top 5 forwards in the league at that point.
Yes.
Maybe top 10, some would say. Tony DeAngelo was one of the top offensive defensemen in the league. The goaltending was fantastic. It is clear there's time to move on from Henrik, and it's fantastic. So DeAngelo's gone. The goaltending has not been as good as it was last year, but those are young kids. Panarin has missed a bunch of time and has not played like he did last year. And Zibanejad is a shadow of what he was last year too. So if all those things were flipped around and they're all the same way they were last year, the goaltending was great. DeAngelo was there. Zibanejad, Panarin are playing the way they were. They'd be in the playoffs right now. But that's not the case. And again, it's not the young kids. And Dave said this. So I still think they can make it now. I think Zibanejad is getting better. Panarin will improve. Fox is still a player. Those guys they put Jack Johnson on waivers actually on the weekend. So I still think they can make the playoffs. But if all those things were equal to last year, they'd be 10 points ahead of where they're at right now.
Yeah, but there are probably several teams that are saying that.
If it's about their candies and nuts.
Yeah, exactly. But the how many points are they? We're at about the halfway point now. Right. Give or take, depending on
right.
How many
so the Rangers have got 25 points. They're 11, 12, and 3.
And where's the cutoff at point wise?
So 32 points is Boston. So the Islanders have got 42, 38 for Washington. Yeah, Pittsburgh.
So they're 7 points behind. We're at the halfway point.
Right.
And every game you're playing is a 4-point game.
Right.
The only problem with that is that, when you get down the stretch, you always hear people talking about, it's hard because it's how many teams you got to climb over, and then you know, there's always a team or two that are winning every day. Well, you know, the way it is this year, it always is 3 teams winning every other day.
I agree. That's going to be great right down to the finish because, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are in that position now. They're out of the playoffs, but 7 or 8 points out of the playoffs, but they can still make the playoffs because you're playing against teams you're trying to jump over. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it's hard. Like in a 10-game segment when you're playing all division games, like, you know, if you have a good run, you're 6-4.
Right.
But if you're going poorly, you'll be 5-5. So you're only gaining 2 points.
Yeah,
in a 10-game segment. So, you know, what you really need is we've had several teams that, you know, had those 8-1-1 runs in 10-game segments. The Rangers need one of those.
Yeah, totally.
To get. Yeah, you're not gonna win, go 7-3 and make up enough ground.
Yeah. How about you just said 7-3? That's Pittsburgh Penguins the last 10 games, 7-3.
Yeah.
That as much as I didn't think that they were that good. They played that. That's a surprise team for me. Florida's a surprise team for me. Dallas is a surprise team for me in the other way. Not doing so well, but
yeah. Well, you got to look at their games too. Like how many games do they still have to go to catch up with?
Good point. So they played 24 games. Columbus ahead of them has played 30 games. So their winning percentage is .500, Dallas, which still wouldn't give them the playoffs, but it leapfrog them over Columbus. So,
yeah. Well, Columbus is not in, right?
No, they're not in. They're the 5th place team. So they've
So how far is Columbus out?
Columbus is so 33 points is what Chicago has as the 4th place team, and Columbus has 29 points.
So they're 4 points. See, that's why another reason why I really think that, you know, because their issue has just been scoring. Like if they could just get a few more goals, you know, I think I would try to do that. And you know, can Chicago keep that together?
Yeah, I know.
You know, they've been really impressive.
Yeah, and Taves still being out too, right? Well,
it's unbelievable. And Dodge.
And who retired? Seabrook retired too, correct?
Yeah. Well, you know, I watch them just because I find them. You know, there's so many entertaining teams now. Like Winnipeg is a really entertaining team to watch. I love watching Winnipeg play, and a team that, you know, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but the Minnesota Wild, are fun to watch.
Yeah,
you know.
And they were the exact opposite of that before too, right?
Oh, they were just they had the smallest national footprint of any team in the league.
Yeah,
like you know, you never said, you know, and that's actually true. Like, you know, nobody buys Minnesota Wild jerseys, you know, that kind of thing. But you know, now they've got an exciting team, and if you look at the top of their lineup, it's, you know, Kaprizov, the rookie of the year candidate. It's Jordan Greenway. It's Eriksson Ek. You know, all the younger players are leading the way, and Zach Parise is the middle of the pack guy now. So there's been a changing of the guard there, and that's what Bill Guerin has brought in.
I was just going to say, Bill Guerin, GM of the year.
In my mind, he's right there. There are some other candidates certainly as well. I mean, Bill Zito. I think you got to give. You know him a look.
That's kind of a strange award, though, right? Because a lot of the work that's done to have a successful season is done in previous seasons. But I guess there's no way to.
Yeah. But I mean, there's some GMs that, you know, if you look around, you know, they've done a good job. They've kept their team, you know, competitive. You know, and you also know, you know, who's in trouble as a GM. By, you know, not making any progress, or you know, what's happening with their team.
I guess they can't fire the owner in Buffalo, though, right?
No, but you know, if it was up to the fans, they would.
No kidding.
You know, I think they'd fire the owner, and that's such a mess. And you know, we talked about this last time, but I just feel sorry for the fans in Buffalo because they really deserve better. They're great fans.
And even from the player side, too, with a lot of those young players. Like, I think if I'm an agent now, I'm thinking, oh, God, I don't want my guy there. I mean, it's such a negative situation. You want to have your young players in a situation where there's older guys to help them win and do all that kind of stuff. But
I'll tell you one thing though. I still believe they'd be making a huge mistake if they trade
Eichel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it.
It's too hard to find a number one center.
Right.
And he's that guy. He's been beat up, and his biggest fault is he wants to win so bad he gets cantankerous.
I know you tell me that, and I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I don't see that from him. I just see this pouty guy who, if it's not going his way, instead of working harder to make the team better, is pouting and not competing. Right.
So, yeah. Well, I guess we'll. I just remember all the criticism of Riley when he was there, and he doesn't want it. Well,
but he competed during the game, so he competed hard during the games. It was more his comments at the end there that got himself moved out.
Well, there were some comments too about his level of play as well.
Yeah.
So nobody thought he was a superior player every day he was on the ice there in Buffalo.
Right.
So anyway, we've run out of time as usual, but we appreciate you tuning in. If you want to read what I have to think about the teams that need to be a trade, I'll be writing that for Hockey Buzz this week. Also, I'm available on Podcast with Bob Duff on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4:00, hockeydebates.com. And Tom, tell everyone where.
The great Bob Duff. I like him. That's a great name too. Great old hockey name. And again, if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. And we'll see everybody on Wednesday.